My sister secretly embezzled thousands from our family to fund her affair. Then she handed me a $55,000 childless tax invoice at Thanksgiving. So I handed her husband the receipts. That ended their marriage. My sister slid a cream-colored manila folder across the Thanksgiving table, like she was serving me a subpoena. "Sign this," Chloe said, her voice perfectly steady, carrying over the clatter of silverware. "It's a child support agreement for non-parents. I think it's time you start paying your fair share." I laughed, a short, sharp burst of air, but nobody else did. The roasted turkey was still steaming in the center of Grandma Eleanor's dining table. My mother had just set down a bowl of mashed potatoes, her hands freezing mid-air. The good silver was out, the heavy, ornate forks my grandmother had polished just that morning. Chloe was staring at me with the flat, dead-eyed, prepared expression of someone who had rehearsed this exact moment in her rearview mirror before she'd even stepped onto the porch. She wasn't joking. Chloe had actually typed up a legal-looking document. 3 full pages, printed on heavy stock paper, with a signature line at the bottom and a notary block she hadn't filled in yet. She called it a childless tax. She looked me dead in the eye and said that women like me, single, child-free, career-focused, had been dodging our duty to the next generation for years, and it was time to pay up. "You want to walk everyone through the math?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Or should I guess how you arrived at whatever absurd number is in there?" "Oh, I've done the math," she said. She flipped open the folder and pulled out a second sheet of paper. It was a highly detailed breakdown of diapers, daycare copays, private school tuition, and pediatrician visits, going all the way back to my nephew Leo's birth 8 years ago. They were numbers she'd clearly pulled off some mommy blogger website and inflated to suit her narrative. "This is what it costs to raise a child in this economy. You've had all the emotional benefits of having a nephew and absolutely none of the financial burden." "Those are your bills, Chloe," I said, looking at her like she had lost her mind. "Not mine. I didn't decide to have a child. You did. I never agreed to split your living expenses." "That's exactly the problem," she snapped, her voice raising an octave. My uncle's wine glass paused halfway to his mouth. "You think love is free? It's not. Somebody pays for it. It's just never been you." My Aunt Clara gasped audibly. My grandmother set down her fork with a small, deliberate clink against the fine china. And here is the part that stung the most. Nobody defended me. They just sat there, watching, waiting to see what I would do, treating my life like it was a matinee performance of a cheap soap opera. "Chloe, please, this isn't the time," my mother finally whispered, wringing her napkin. "No, Mom, it's exactly the time," Chloe shot back. "Everyone is here. Everyone should know how this family actually operates." Then she dropped the real number. $55,000. "Back pay," she said, looking incredibly smug. "For 8 years of Leo's life that you haven't financially supported. You've been freeloading off my family," she announced to the entire table, her voice echoing off the dining room walls. "Taking him to the aquarium, buying him birthday gifts, acting like his beloved aunt for Instagram photos without paying a single cent toward the actual grueling work of raising him." "That is not how child support works," I said, keeping my face perfectly neutral. "That's not how anything in the real world works." "It's discrimination," she yelled, slamming her hand on the table. "Childless people expect all the joy of a family without any of the sacrifice. You get all the fun parts of being a mom, the hugs, the birthday parties, the weekend movie trips, and you don't pay for the privilege. Surrogates get paid. Nannies get paid. Why shouldn't I?" I just looked at her. I looked at her freshly highlighted hair, the expensive silk blouse she was wearing, and her jawline, which was noticeably sharper and freshly contoured. A $10,000 spa and cosmetic package she had gotten done at a luxury clinic in downtown Maplewood that past spring. I thought about the frantic text message she had sent me in September, begging for $60 because she couldn't afford Leo's marine biology field trip fee. Then came her threat: pay the $55,000 or I would never be allowed to see my nephew again. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I smiled. The kind of cold, polite smile you give a telemarketer before you hang up on them. I closed the folder, slid it back across the table, and said, "I need some time to think about this." "Take your time," she smirked, taking a sip of her wine. "But the clock is already running." I stayed for another 20 minutes. I helped clear the plates like nothing had happened. I hugged my grandmother goodbye, holding on just a second longer than usual to ground myself. Then I walked out to my car, got in, and sat in the pitch-black driveway for 15 minutes, watching my breath fog up the windshield. I was replaying the deafening silence of a room full of blood relatives who had chosen to stare at their plates rather than defend me. By the time I pulled into my own driveway, I wasn't angry anymore. I am 35 years old. I am a freelance tax consultant and forensic accountant. I run my own business out of a small, quiet office in Maplewood, New Jersey. I spend my days tracking missing assets, auditing small businesses, and finding money that people try very hard to hide. I sat in my kitchen in the dark, my coat still on, and opened my laptop. That night, I started building my own folder. I chose my life. I chose not to have children because I love the freedom of my quiet apartment, my disposable income, and a life that answers to nobody but me. I have never resented anyone for having kids. Until that Thanksgiving, I would have said I had a great relationship with my sister. Chloe is 39. She married Mark Evans 10 years ago in a lavish country club wedding that put our parents $15,000 in debt. She works part-time as an interior designer, though working mostly consists of curating an aesthetic Instagram feed and occasionally picking out throw pillows for her friends. Mark is a good man. He's a logistics director for a shipping company. It's a demanding, unglamorous job that pays the mortgage. Mark trusted Chloe completely. He let her handle the household finances because he was working 60-hour weeks to afford the lifestyle she demanded. Leo was born 8 years ago. He is a brilliant, sweet kid who is absolutely obsessed with marine biology. He can rattle off facts about the Greenland shark for an hour straight. Since he was a toddler, I've taken him every single Wednesday afternoon, free of charge, while Chloe ran errands. I picked him up from school, bought him snacks, helped with his homework, and listened to him talk about the Mariana Trench. It was never a burden. It was the highlight of my week. But looking back, I started noticing the cracks, the Wednesday errands that stretched into the evening. The way Chloe would pick him up, smelling faintly of a men's cologne that definitely wasn't Mark's. The way she was constantly asking family members for emergency cash, despite Mark making a 6-figure salary. By 3 a.m. on Friday morning, my spreadsheet was complete. I itemized 8 years of Wednesday afternoons, 4 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, calculated at a standard local babysitting rate of $25 an hour, plus the emergency weekend pickups when Chloe would lose track of time. That came to $38,500. I built a second sheet for gifts: the custom shark-themed bedding, the iPad for his 7th birthday, the trips to the aquarium, the back-to-school clothes I bought when Chloe said she was too stressed to shop. I applied a modest 4% annual interest rate, the exact same courtesy she had applied to her childless tax. That came to $18,200. Total, $56,700. I printed it, stapled it, and mailed it to her house via certified mail, with a single sticky note on the front. Family doesn't charge for babysitting. But since we are treating love as a transaction now, here is your balance, net 30 days. She called me screaming exactly 45 minutes after the mail carrier dropped it off. Family doesn't send invoices, she shrieked, her voice cracking. You did, I said calmly, at Thanksgiving, in front of Grandma. That is completely different and you know it. You are a bitter, barren woman trying to ruin my life. Explain the financial difference to me, Chloe. I'm an accountant. I love math. Go ahead. She hung up. 10 minutes later, she called back, breathed heavily into the receiver for 10 seconds, and hung up again. I realized my hands weren't shaking at all. I didn't feel guilty. I felt surgically precise. Update 1. Chloe didn't back down. She escalated. She immediately launched a smear campaign, weaponizing my mother. My mom called me 3 days later, using her careful, conflict-averse voice. Your sister is very hurt by your little prank, my mother sighed. She's been under so much financial stress lately. You know she had a rough patch with her mental health. Can't you just apologize and pay her a little something to keep the peace? Pay her for what, Mom? Existing? I'm not apologizing for matching her exact energy. I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. Chloe then called Mark's mother, Helen, in Pennsylvania, spinning a wild tale about how I was suing her for spending time with Leo. Helen, confused and terrified, called me. I didn't argue. I just scanned Chloe's original notarized $55,000 demand and emailed it to Helen. Helen called me back an hour later, profusely apologizing. Then, she casually mentioned something that made my blood run cold. I don't understand why Chloe is so desperate for money, Helen murmured. Just last year, I sent her $4,500 for Leo's private math tutoring because she said he was failing and Mark's bonus hadn't cleared. Leo is a straight-A student. He has never had a math tutor in his life. I added it to a new secret note on my phone. The breaking point happened 2 weeks later. I was waiting at the school pickup line on a Wednesday. Leo climbed into the backseat of my car, looking incredibly small and refusing to make eye contact. Mom says you charge money to love me now, he whispered, staring at his light-up sneakers. She said you're going to stop picking me up because she can't afford to pay your ransom. I had to put the car in park because my vision literally tunneled with rage. I turned around, looked my sweet 8-year-old nephew in the eye, and said, Leo, I will always pick you up. I love you for free, forever. Your mom is just confused about some grown-up math, okay? He nodded, but the damage was done. Chloe had weaponized her own child's sense of security to punish me. I didn't say a word to Chloe. I just started digging. The explosion finally happened at my parents' house, 3 weeks after Thanksgiving. My mother had orchestrated a mandatory healing Sunday dinner. Chloe arrived looking defensive and exhausted. Mark sat beside her, unusually quiet, his jaw tight. He looked like a man who was doing arithmetic in his head and hated the sum. During dessert, my father made an offhand, tactless dad joke about the cost of Chloe's cosmetic spa treatments back in the spring. Hope you got a warranty on that contouring, kiddo. Things cost a fortune nowadays. Chloe let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh. But Mark didn't laugh. How much did that actually cost, Chloe? He asked, his voice dead flat. Mark, not now, she hissed. How much? Chloe muttered a number that was drastically lower than the $10,000 I knew she had spent. Mark's face turned the color of brick. He stood up, grabbed her arm gently but firmly, and pulled her into the hallway. The entire dining room went dead silent. Through the archway, I could see Chloe waving her arms, talking a mile a minute. Mark just shook his head, pulled out his phone, and showed her something on the screen. Chloe physically recoiled, her face draining of all color. They left without eating dessert. My mother sat frozen, clutching her napkin. At 8 a.m. the next morning, my phone rang. It was Mark. He sounded like he had aged 10 years overnight. "I need your spreadsheets," he rasped. "Every receipt, every date, everything you sent her. And I need you to meet me at the diner on 4th Street in an hour." Update 2. When I walked into the diner, Mark looked destroyed. He had dark circles under his eyes and was wearing a wrinkled shirt he had clearly slept in. He ordered a black coffee and just stared at it. I opened my laptop and pulled up the forensic timeline I had built. "Start from the beginning," he said, his voice hollow. "Show me the dates she asked you for money." I walked him through it. I showed him the $3,000 she had begged from me in 2022 for a preschool deposit emergency. I showed him the Wednesday afternoon timelines. Then, I told him about the $4,500 his mother Helen had sent for fake math tutoring. Mark's hands started shaking. "Look at the date of your $3,000 transfer," he whispered, turning my laptop toward him. "October 14th, 2022. "Yeah," I said. "Why?" "Because on October 16th, 2022, she posted a picture of a brand new $3,200 Chanel handbag on Instagram. She told me she bought it with a bonus from her interior design firm." Mark rubbed his face aggressively. "But it's not just the bags. I got into her old iPad last night, the one synced to her iCloud." Mark pulled out a manila folder of his own. Inside were printed emails. They were monthly payment confirmations from a luxury leasing office for a high-end studio apartment in the Arts District, 30 minutes away. The lease was under the name J. Vance. "Julian Vance," Mark said, his voice cracking on the name. "He's a wellness guru and yoga instructor at that boutique gym she goes to, the one she spends 4 hours at every Wednesday afternoon." It all clicked into place with horrifying precision. The Wednesdays weren't errands. The cologne wasn't an accident. Chloe had been carrying on an affair for nearly 2 years. But the apartment was expensive, and Mark had started tightening their household budget because of inflation. Chloe needed cash to keep funding her double life, but she couldn't pull it from their joint account without Mark noticing. So she built a shadow economy out of our family's love for Leo. She scammed me for $3,000. She scammed Helen for $4,500. We dug deeper and found out she had panicked and called Grandma Eleanor last year, crying about a $2,500 legal retainer for a fake custody scare involving Leo's school. Grandma wired the money immediately. Aunt Clara had given her $1,500 for emergency speech therapy that Leo never attended. Every single time, she used her son as collateral to extract cash from the people who loved him, completely tax-free, unauditable, and unquestioned. The $55 childless tax. I breathed out, the sheer audacity of it washing over me. Was a desperate cash grab, Mark finished, staring at the diner table. "I told her last month I was cutting off her discretionary credit card to save for Leo's college fund. She panicked. She needed a massive influx of cash to keep the apartment and Julian. What better way than to guilt trip her successful, child-free sister in front of the whole family? If you had signed that agreement, you would have been paying rent for her affair." I sat there, feeling a bizarre mix of absolute vindication and profound sorrow. Mark looked at me, tears finally spilling over his eyelashes. "Will you come with me to tell your parents?" he asked. "Try and stop me," I said. The family intervention happened that Sunday. Mark didn't yell. He was terrifyingly calm. He laid out the bank statements, the lease agreements, and the texts between Chloe and Julian right on the same dining table where she had handed me her fake invoice. My parents, Grandma Eleanor, and Aunt Clara sat in stunned, horrified silence. Chloe tried to deny it. She tried to gaslight Mark, claiming he was invading her privacy. But then Grandma Eleanor spoke up, her voice trembling with 82 years of quiet authority. "I gave you $2,500 to keep my great-grandson safe," she said, looking at Chloe like she was a stranger. "You used it to rent a bed to sleep with another man." Chloe burst into theatrical tears, screaming that nobody understood her, that Mark worked too much, that she was drowning in the pressure of motherhood. She looked at me, her eyes full of venom. "You did this. You ruined my life over a stupid invoice." "No, Chloe," I said, standing up. "You ruined your life the day you monetized your son to fund your betrayal." I just did the math. Nobody defended her. For the first time in 39 years, the Golden Child had run out of audience members. Update 3, 1 year later. The fallout was biblical. Mark filed for divorce immediately. Because of the overwhelming paper trail of financial infidelity and the misuse of marital assets to fund an affair, the divorce heavily favored him. He got the house, he got primary custody of Leo, with Chloe getting supervised visitation every other weekend until she could prove she had a stable living environment. Julian, the yoga instructor, vanished into thin air the second the money dried up and an angry, soon-to-be ex-husband entered the picture. It turns out Julian had 3 other clients helping him pay his bills. Chloe had to move into a tiny, dingy, 1-bedroom apartment on the wrong side of town. Her interior design firm quietly let her go when the gossip reached the owner. She now works as a receptionist at a car dealership. The IRS also got involved. Because Chloe had collected over $15,000 in gifts under false pretenses and funneled them into a secondary lease, Mark's divorce attorney flagged it. She was audited and hit with massive penalties. As for me, my tax consulting business is booming. Turns out, people really want an accountant who is petty and thorough enough to destroy a fraudster with an Excel spreadsheet. I still pick Leo up every Wednesday. He is 9 now, and his obsession has shifted from sharks to deep-sea submersibles. Mark and I have become surprisingly good friends. We co-parent Leo in a weird, platonic, village-style way. Last month, for Leo's birthday, I bought him a real telescope. When he hugged me, he whispered, "Thanks for loving me for free, Auntie." I looked across the yard at Chloe, who was standing awkwardly by the fence in a cheap sundress, completely isolated from the family she had tried to exploit. I didn't feel smug. I just felt tired and deeply grateful for the peace in my life. She sent me a bill for being childless. It cost her absolutely everything. Commenter 1. As an accountant, reading the part where you reverse engineered her babysitting bill with a 4% interest rate was the most satisfying thing I have read all year. She thought she could outmath a forensic accountant? That is a special kind of stupid. Good on you for protecting that little boy. Commenter 2. The fact that she used her own son's imaginary emergencies, fake tutoring, fake custody battles, to fund a luxury apartment for her affair partner is genuinely sociopathic. Mark dodged a massive bullet, and I'm so glad Leo has an aunt like you who actually loves him unconditionally. Commenter 3. You ruined your life the day you monetized your son. I just did the math. Ice. Cold. Put that on a plaque in your office immediately. Also, the audacity to demand $55,000 at a Thanksgiving dinner while eating the turkey your mom paid for. The absolute narcissism is staggering.